The real reason Israel has to kill the Iranians has nothing to do with anything they're talking about. Obviously, because Israel is the biggest, in America, the biggest terrorist in the world. We know that. The real reason is because of the history of Israel. The history of Iran, the Persians. It's all about history. It's all about hiding it. In America, they're still hiding the fact that their forefathers were slaves. They've taken it out of the books. Were slave owners. They've taken it out of the books. They want to hide that. If you knew who the Persians were, you know why all this is going on. And here's the thing about it. The Persians are fighting for you. They're fighting to remove colonialism or any form of slavery that exists.
If we hear about ancient Greece and ancient Rome, then why do we never hear about ancient Persia? Especially if it existed in the same region and time period as the other two civilizations. And it was larger than Rome, controlled 40% of the world's population, and contributed more to science and mathematics than Rome did, but still gets left out of the history books. Well, there are two major Western biases for why we don't hear about it in American school books much. The first bias is just that ancient Persia is modern-day Iran, while ancient Greece and Rome are romanticized as the founders of democracy, American values, and Western values. And the second bias, which is sort of related, is that we mostly just let the ancient Greeks tell us about what Persia was like. But the ancient Greeks were Persia's rival, so of course the Greeks were going to write about how evil and aggressive the Persians were. And it's why we learn a lot more about Alexander the Great conquering Persia than we do about Persia itself. And it's why the most popular movie ever made about Persia in the West is about 300 ultra-masculine Greeks fighting the entire Persian army. But if you look at non-Greek sources, they talk about Persia a lot more positively, where you could actually see Greece being the bad guy and Persia being the good guy. For example, Persia had very little slaves for the time and actually paid their workers for state projects, whereas almost every single thing in ancient Greece was built using slaves, which really isn't an exaggeration. And it's why famous Greek philosophers such as Aristotle and Plato could afford to just spend all day sitting and thinking in the first place. Not only that, but if you look at the way they treated the ethnic groups they conquered, sure, you could say it wasn't right for either of them to conquer and build an empire in the first place, but this is the ancient world. And compared to other ancient empires, the Persians were remarkably humane and tolerant for the time, and historians regard it as the world's first multi-ethnic empire that was peaceful, fair, and prosperous. Whereas the Greeks kind of just treated conquered people like colonies who were inferior. And when it came to women, Persia was again remarkably progressive for its time, as it let women own property, set up businesses, and serve in leadership roles, where one of the wealthiest merchants in Persia was a woman, while Greek philosophers like Aristotle would write about how women are inferior by nature and lacked the rational capacity to rule. And women weren't considered legal people who could sign any form of contract according to Athenian law. Unfortunately, despite how tolerant Persia was, almost none of it gets talked about, which is why I wanted to make a video on it. And sadly, there could actually be a lot more civilizations like this than we think, which we'll never hear about simply because the victors write the history books. For example, we hear all about ancient Rome's accomplishments, but we hear much less about the accomplishments from ancient Rome's rival in North Africa, Carthage. And it's because Carthage lost. So the Romans burned almost every single text from Carthage. And almost everything we know about Carthage today comes from Roman writing, which had a lot of propaganda. So the Carthaginian writing on what really happened in their own civilization's history is now lost forever. And Carthage now is simply modern-day Tunisia, where few people today know that it was once as advanced as Rome. Yet if a few battles went a little bit differently, it could be ancient Rome that we never hear about. So despite all the bias against Persia, things could have been way worse, since Persia did also get most of its own writings burned by Alexander the Great. But we still have some other sources to tell us about Persia today because Persia was just so massive. It controlled 40% of the world's population, so it just wasn't possible to burn every single positive source about Persia around the world, whereas Carthage wasn't as lucky. See, that's kind of the sad thing about ancient history. If you aren't as massive as Persia, and you're on the losing side, and the victors burn your books so they can rewrite the history books themselves, then a lot of knowledge about your civilization is now lost forever. Humanity will never be able to recover it, it's just impossible. Meaning there could be a lot of other great, thriving civilizations from the past which we will simply never know about.
First thing to understand is that Iran, for most of its history, had a different name. It was called Persia. And Persia starts, by most accounts, about 550 years before Christ. Okay? Persia is a very old, established country, a people who have survived unbelievable number of centuries. Persia is older than any European country, older than the United States by many centuries, predates Christianity, Judaism too. Wow. If you didn't know it, think about it. Think about what that might mean. Up until the 7th century AD, that's for over 1,000 years, the religion of the people there is reported to have been Zoroastrian religion. Perhaps some of you are familiar with that one. Been around a long time. In the 7th century, thanks to Muhammad, it became a Muslim, and it switched over, if you like, to Islam. And it has had a continuous culture, civilization, state, religion, Islam, ever since, right to the present. Well, when the Europeans began their colonial expansion, the British took the first big leap when they took over the immense country of India. Not even a country, a whole region of that part of Asia. And with India, it became necessary, the way this colonialism often worked, to make sure you could get to and from India so that the enormous wealth that Britain transferred from India to Britain to support, to finance the British Empire, which India almost single-handedly did for long periods of time. In order to secure that, you had to control the regions between India in Asia and Britain in Europe. And smack dab in the middle of that line you could draw from Britain to India was the huge territory of Persia. And so the British began to get interested, already in the 17th century, in Persia. But they weren't the only ones. Also, fearful of being surrounded by British colonies and British influence, was the then feudal kingdom of Russia. And Persia is right on the border with Russia. Please keep in mind, if you're not familiar with geography, that Iran and Russia today have a very big, long border between them. No other country, just a border. Well, the British and the Russians battled over control, influence over Persia. They each were larger, had bigger armies, navies, and so the Persians had to accommodate. They never became a colony, in that they're a little bit like China, but they suffered lots of intrusions of foreign influence. Again, like China.
I was doing my deep research into the history of Iran today, and I'm just like, girl, Russia and Britain, you all did them people very fucking dirty, okay? You shouldn't have done that. And when y'all had that, like, Russian, Iranian, or excuse me, European, what is it called? What's that place called? United Kingdom, Iran Oil Company. And y'all did that 84-16 split with you taking the 84% of the oil. Check. I didn't like that. And then when those world wars were happening and y'all invaded and spread disease and killed off 25% of the Iranian population, I didn't like that either. That was very disgusting. Then y'all are replacing shahs with ayatollahs, and then you're having these, what is it called? Constitutional revolutions, white revolutions, and then finally the actual Iranian revolution that Ayatollah Khomeini showed up for. The Shah, he had fucking leukemia, and y'all chased him out the country, had to die in exile in Egypt. What are we doing? Because you want to steal them people's fucking resources? Give them their fucking resources. Actually, hey, I ran for Iranians, period. No Iranian ever called me no damn hard R. And that's facts. Okay? So I'm just like, that's motherfucking facts.
In the late 1800s, for the end of the 19th century, the British come to the conclusion that oil is the new coal, and that the future is definitely going to be oil. And the problem the British have is the Dutch have just bought their oil company. The British Oil Company was actually originally an antique dealership called Shell. And then somebody comes up with a genius idea. What if you just read a bunch of history? You'll find a reference to prior use of oil. And then once you find that reference, then you just go to that place and look for oil. In 1901, a guy named Darcy approaches the Iranian government to see if he can get permission to explore for oil in southwest corner of Iran. The ruler at the time was a Qajar named Muzaffar-ad-Din Shah, and he strikes a deal with him. Here's the deal. In the event that they do find oil, the Shah, the Qajar ruler of Iran, will get the equivalent in today dollars of about $2.5 million, just cash. And he'll also get 16% concession. So for every $100 that the British pull out of oil, Shah will get 16 of those dollars and the Brits get 84 of those dollars. That's an incredible deal. Usually it's a 50-50 split. It's Iranian oil, British effort. You split it 50-50. This is an 84-16 split.
One of the places most devastated by famine, and an atrocity often overlooked in the history books, was the Persian famine of 1917 to 1919. Persia, today known as Iran, was officially neutral in the First World War, yet found herself hemmed in by hostile powers. Russia to the north, Britain to the southeast, and the Ottoman Empire to the west. That neutrality was violated almost immediately within the first 3 months of the war's outbreak. British, Russian, and Ottoman forces had all invaded Persian territory. Military occupation, crop requisitions for the war effort, and disruption of transport devastated the economy. Imports of food dwindled, prices soared, and by 1917, a vicious drought compounded the crisis. In some areas, particularly under British control, grain was diverted to feed troops or withheld from civilian markets. Some historians argue that this was no accident, but a deliberate policy to weaken Persia and tighten imperial control. The toll was staggering. Between 1 and 2 million people perished from starvation and the diseases that followed, roughly 1/5 to 1/4 of the entire population.
Ah, I know. So you would like me to be your stooge?
Are you aware of a CIA psychological profile about you, sir?
No, I must admit that it's the first time I hear that.
Truly?
Yes? What is it?
This secret study portrays the Shah as a brilliant but dangerous megalomaniac who is likely to pursue his own aims in disregard of U.S. interests.
So how could I be your man, your agent?
How do you mean?
Safeguarding your interests.
Well, it says that the Shah is an uncertain ally. His dreams of glory apparently...
I know. So you would like me to be your stooge?
Do you want me to go on, or shall I forget about this,
Well,
Your Majesty?
some funny points, why not?
Surely, Your Majesty, you're not telling me that the Jewish lobby in the United States pulls the strings of the presidency.
Not entirely, but I think even a little too much, even for Israel interests.
You think the Jewish lobby in the United States is too powerful for the interests of Israel?
I think so. Sometimes they are disserving the interests of Israel because
Explain.
they're pushing around too many people.
How do you mean pushing around?
Well, pressuring, they have many means at their disposal. They are putting up pressure on many, many people. And at the end, I don't think that it will even help Israel.
Why, if this is true, why would the President of the United States pay attention to that lobby?
They are strong.
Strong in what sense?
They are controlling many things.
Controlling what?
Newspapers, medias,
Your Majesty.
banks, finances, and I'm going to stop there.
Well, now wait just a second. You really do believe that the Jewish community in the United States is that powerful? They make the media reflect their view of foreign policy?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
They do not report, we do not report honestly?
Don't mix things, please. I don't say the media. I say in the media they have people. Not the entire media. Some newspapers will only reflect their views, yes.
No? The New York Times, for instance, is owned by the Salzburger family, who are Jewish. Are you suggesting that the New York Times is biased in its treatment of the question of Zionism, Israel's existence, the United States' relationship with the Arab world?
I will have to put all the articles of the New York Times written on this subject and draw the conclusion. You can put this to the computer and it will answer you.
What you're saying is that, yes, you do believe.
Well, let's wait for the answer of the computer.
Washington Post?
The same.
The networks?
Less.
I must say you are speaking with your characteristic candor.
Yes, if you like. I try to be candid. I have always been.
He was even-handed in his candor. Next, he turned to the Palestinians.
The United States and Israel helped install Ayatollah Khomeini to make sure Iran could never be the superpower that it was capable of being. And they both made the profit of a lifetime during the Iran-Iraq war doing arms sales. And people want America and Israel to help again. Help, right? I'm not going to tell you what you should think, but I am going to do a historic rundown and you can make your own opinion at the end. Now let's start with people turning on the Shah. There was legitimate reasons people had grievances with the Shah, from working with the CIA on coups to tortures, building Evin prison. Now America and Israel knew the people were angry with the Shah, but they stood 10 toes behind him. Until they didn't. Okay, let's zoom out on the regional chessboard because revolutions don't happen in a vacuum. In September 1978, the Camp David Accords were signed between Egypt and Israel, with United States as the broker. This completely reshaped power in the Middle East. Egypt was removed from the Arab military front against Israel. That left one regional power that could still challenge the US and Israel's dominance: Iran. When did I say that happened? 1978. When did the revolution happen? 1 year later. Under the Shah, Iran was not just the US's Western ally. Just as much as there were grievances against the Shah, there were some pros as well. Iranians would not live in this never-ending nostalgia if there weren't some pros. Iran as a nation was becoming too wealthy, too militarily advanced, and too politically independent. And here's something we hadn't seen before. The Shah had begun criticizing the West. Quick side note, if you want to know more about the coup of 1953, we have an entire YouTube video about that. If you want to know about the Shah criticizing the West, the video right before this is entirely about that. So the Shah starts criticizing the West. They're seeing him less as a partner and more as a rival. And America knew Iranians were also fed up with the Shah. So instead of helping him maintain further power, they wanted to control the collapse. Enter Ayatollah Khomeini. Late 1978, the face of Khomeini was everywhere in Iran. People who lived through the revolution described a flood of posters, leaflets, sermons, recordings. It felt organized and funded. Now, while Iranians were protesting on the street for Ayatollah Khomeini, the United States was quietly opening channels to Khomeini's inner circle. Declassified records show US officials communicating with his representatives in the final weeks before the revolution, trying to prevent Iranian military from crushing the uprising and trying to find an accommodation between Khomeini and the generals. Here's the thing, America loves a coup. Regardless, if you're on the right, on the left, we can acknowledge that, right? They have done coups in Iran, they have basically done coups everywhere, and the Carter administration discouraged the Iranian army from staging a coup. This is not some suddenly pro-coup video, I just want to talk about how suspicious it is that they suddenly were against. The Shah left Iran January 1979 under pressure from US officials. The declassified documents show Carter encouraging Pahlavi to depart for treatment abroad, weakening the monarchy just before Khomeini's return. And here's a country we haven't talked about yet: France. At the same time, France was giving Khomeini something no other exile leader had: a global broadcast platform. He was living outside of Paris, where Western journalists had full access to him. Western media did the rest. Time magazine named Khomeini Man of the Year 1979. Why did the United States do this? They did not want Iran to nationalize under the Shah. They did not want a strong, independent Iran that could control its oil and its future. An Islamic theocracy that could be isolated, sanctioned, and hated by its neighbors and locked into endless conflict was manageable. The entire entity of Israel exists out of fear. They are allegedly a safe haven for Jewish people who are persecuted all across the world, which is true. There is anti-Semitism all across the world. But what helps Israel grow? Further anti-Semitism, so they can be that safe haven. When you then have an Islamic Republic come in and persecute Jewish people, you can say, see, I told you, you guys have to come here, the Muslims are after you. Not to mention the giant check you get during the Iran-Iraq war. And then came someone we can never talk enough about: Reagan. So if we remember in this story, the Shah left Iran, he's getting medical treatment where? The United States. Iranians are pissed. Give him back. What happens? The Iranian hostage crisis. Carter, being useless as ever, can't get them back. All remaining hostages were released following Reagan's inauguration January 20th, 1981, helping him secure the presidency. Again, you can think whatever you want, just take this as information.
Look at this. This is an article from November 20th, 1979, and it states that Iran would release 4 women and 6 black men. At the time, Iran was going through a revolution and had taken over the US embassy. But the reason why he released women and black men had very little to do with negotiations. He said in the article that Islam respects women and that he considered American blacks to be oppressed, and that's why he ordered them to be released. And I was actually able to find the video of him saying it during an interview with Mike Wallace from 60 Minutes.
Women are given great dignity in Islam, and the blacks have been oppressed in the United States. Great injustice was done unto them. They were under pressure in the United States. Thus they came here. We are doing this owing to the tenets of Islam.
And if you like history like this, follow for more.
Ayatollah Khomeini, you seem to have had some success, you and your followers, in changing the government in Tehran. Do you have any feeling for how long it may be before there is an Islamic State in Iran?
It is very close, and very soon we will announce a new government.
Are we talking about days, weeks?
Probably few days.
Let me explore a little bit possible future relations with the United States. The Ayatollah has made some remarks about American bases interfering with Iranian independence. He has said that among those who violate human rights, there's no doubt that in the present age this is Carter, referring, I take it, to the president. And I just would like to understand whether he expects friendly or chilly relations with the United States.
If the United States government sees the continuation of the policy that they have had and do not support the Shah, which has committed so much crime and treason to the country and has appointed the illegal government, which the American government is supporting it. So if they seize that one and they start to have better relation with us and have friendly relation with us, then according to our Islamic teaching, there is no reason for us to be in animosity with them.
What is your own role in this government that is to come?
I would not have any position in the future government as such, being the president or a prime minister. And my job is not to be as such. I will be some sort of supervising their activities. I will give them guidance. And if I see some deviation or some mistake, I will remind them how to correct it, give the general guidance.
You would be, in effect, the strong man of Iran.
به این ترتیب شما مرد قوی ایران خواهید بود.
اینطور فرض کنید.
You may assume so.
Wow, man. Damn.
Syrians were a black people. Persians were a black people. Elamites were a black people. And Arabs, yes, were a black people. That's why you see Assyrians have depicted themselves with curly hair, curly beard, and dreadlocks. That's why you see Persians have depicted themselves with curly hair and curly beard. And even there are many wall paintings found in Susa in which Persians have depicted themselves with black skin, have painted themselves with black skin. So therefore, Persians were black people, not a so-called Indo-European. And I believe that Persians, Assyrians, Arabs, and all of the ancient inhabitants of the Middle East were an Ethiopian type of people, the so-called Semitics, an Ethiopian type of people. people like the Somalis, like Ethiopians, like Eritreans, like Djiboutis, like dark-skinned Yemenis. You know, they weren't white people. Why? Because the temperature here in this city goes up to 50 degrees Celsius in summers with a high intensity and a UV index of 12. White people cannot endure this heat. They cannot tolerate this heat. So they cannot be indigenous to this region. Because we semi-white looking people cannot stand this heat. We cannot go outside too much in summers. But how can white people be indigenous to this region? And I don't say this because I'm racist. As you can see, I'm not a black person, and I look mostly like whites than blacks. I just want to tell the truth that the ancient inhabitants of these regions, from Babylonians, Assyrians, Elamite, Persians, Jews, were all black.
First thing to understand is that Iran, for most of its history, had a different name. It was called Persia. And Persia starts, by most accounts, about 550 years before Christ. Okay? Persia is a very old, established country, a people who have survived unbelievable number of centuries. Persia is older than any European country, older than the United States by many centuries, predates Christianity, Judaism too. Wow. If you didn't know it, think about it. Think about.
So, again, we're going to be global with this. This is Persian. So your modern day Arab, this is where it came from. This is their roots. Okay? And I explained it before, the Arab is nothing but a mulatto groups of people. We call them Arab because it's the cultures of Muslim, but these are mulatto groups of children between the melanated black person and a Slav European gave birth to these people. So, this is a Persian woman. So, if you heard about Persia today, if you ever been to Persia, you don't see such women looking like this anymore. This is how bad history is. It's how bad education is. That they don't teach people about these things. They just try to all bring you to one side of the game, one side of the ball, and tell you were a slave. Oh, they bought you from Africa. Oh, they dragged you here. Oh, no, you don't have history.